guys, welcome in. In today's video, I'm going to basically answer a question that I've been asked by people before. Is the schizophrenia trait mod worth it? Is it worth that 7 points? No. Just like real life, it's not worth it. Being schizophrenic in real life is a detriment, and having the schizophrenic trait in Project Zomboid is also a detriment. Oh wow, what a surprise. Many of you found me through my video about using the schizophrenia trait mod. Well, since then, I've become quite familiar with the mod, and I've reached a pretty solid conclusion. It is definitely not worth the 7 points this trait offers unless you want a completely different experience from what Zomboid usually offers. By the conclusion of this video, you will understand exactly why 7 points is not enough to justify what you go through. Just like real life, there aren't really any pros to using this trait. I mean, other than those 7 points. And in real life, you don't really get like points for being mentally ill. Don't get me wrong. You're still clearly playing Project Zomboid when you use this trait, but it becomes more of a horror game than just straight up survival. Those quiet moments you get to yourself in Zomboid are interrupted with this trait, and those interruptions become a lot more frequent if you don't treat your symptoms. Honestly, that's just what managing mental illness in real life is like as well. Project Zomboid is a notoriously difficult zombie survival game. In my opinion, it goes above and beyond to serve the player a unique experience. It's one of the few games I know of that offers intense action and jump scares punctuated by moments of extreme existential dread. It is difficult to play Project Zomboid and not consider the weight of the situation your survivor is in. The world they once knew is gone, replaced by one that wants nothing more than to see them perish. Their friends, their family, their coworkers, the people they loved, hell, the people they hated, all gone in an instant. Many of my favorite games touch directly on the experience of isolation, as well as confront existential dread in a meaningful manner. I made a whole video about Death Stranding and Nier Automata, my 2 favorite games, that discusses this. What Project Zomboid does differently, however, is catch you off guard with this. When you play a Kojima game, you're well aware you're going to be confronted with something deeper than just pure action. He has a reputation for unique and meaningful storytelling. If you play a Final Fantasy game, at the very least you can prepare for some political religious commentary. But when I think of zombie survival games, I don't often consider the existential aspect of them. And in my experience, many of them don't give you this feeling. And that is where Zomboid differs. You see, I didn't expect this game to induce any thoughts beyond gotta kill shit and survive. But the structure of this game demands that you slow down and consider the situation in a more realistic light. Your character has human needs, and those needs interfere with their abilities, both inside and outside of combat. Any negative moodle puts a strain elsewhere, the most egregious case of this being sleepiness and fatigue. Injuries can impact your movement. For example, a wound to the right arm always slows down your melee weapon swing. This can be a death sentence for those who heavily rely on melee. Your character can also suffer boredom, which if left unattended can lead to sadness and depression. This slows down the character's actions, and it becomes quite noticeable when you're in a pickle. Weather also impacts your character, and you will find that rain is quite frequent. Getting drenched can lead to a cold, which brings its own set of dangers. What I'm trying to say is that all these factors, as well as the looming zombie threat, force your character to take refuge quite often. They need to sleep every night, so at the very least, you will have to utilize temporary bases until you can set up a more permanent place of residence. And with these forced breaks often come deeper thoughts about what your survivor is going through. Sometimes just wandering around in an empty warehouse or office building will induce this feeling. It doesn't matter if you avoid it. At some point, the game will put you in a situation where everything feels lonely. It's the isolation. The breaks in between the intense action, the quiet moments when you think about how much easier things would be with a team rather than alone, how much different the world would be if you ever saw other survivors. Obviously, in multiplayer, this problem is solved, but in single player, which I prefer, the experience can become existential very quickly. And almost everyone who plays this game has definitely put themselves in the shoes of their survivor. They've considered how they would do in such a situation. Many players model their characters after themselves, using traits that directly reflect who they are in reality. And that leads me to the point of this video. Hi! I have schizoaffective disorder, a combination between schizophrenia and depression. When I discovered the schizophrenic trait in Project Zomboid, I was instantly interested. I've long wondered what having this disorder would be like during a supernatural-like event, such as a vampire-infested world or a zombie apocalypse, which is why the schizophrenia trait mod for Project Zomboid was such an intriguing find to me. Now at first, this trait is intimidating. Hallucinations aren't always easy to discern from other in-game sounds, not until you get used to certain things. For starters, the hallucinations tend to be louder than in-game sounds. Another tell is that they're usually accompanied by the character's heavy breathing and a panic moodle. This is one of the most important things to take note of if you choose to use this trait. You'll hear fake meta events like pipes dropping and guns being fired. There are fake jump scares, hallucinations of zombies, and all kinds of other things to keep you on your toes. In this video, I'm going to address everything I've learned and try to give some tips on how to make this trait work for you if you're truly desperate for those 7 points, which again, you really shouldn't be. Let's start with build. Depending on how brave you are, there is one trait I recommend combining with the schizophrenic trait in order to make things slightly easier. However, it is a risk and could cost you your life if you're not on your toes. Due to this heavy risk, I'll say only the most cautious among us should do this combo. Well, either cautious or stupid, and obviously I fall into the latter category. The trait in question is hard of hearing. I know. Many of you are going to say, that's risky, and you'd be right, it is, hence the warning. However, if you are cautious and play your cards right, make sure to door flash, check perimeters, be aware of broken windows and doors, this trait can help you identify hallucinations right away because they are much louder than the rest of the sounds in the world. Hard of hearing muffles in-game sounds, but it doesn't muffle hallucinations. For this reason, you will catch on quickly when something is fake. When I first made a video about using this mod, I ran into several alarms, which made me think I had horrific RNG in that run. Many commenters informed me that house alarms can very much be hallucinated, and most of the ones I'd encountered in my run were fake. The best way to tell if an alarm is fake? Well, there's a few ways. If there are zombies nearby, watch for them to react. While running from the property, a real alarm will get quieter. Fake alarms stay the same volume, no matter how far you are from where it triggered. Fake alarms are short, much shorter than real ones. Helicopter events are also commonly hallucinated. Once again, if you have the hard of hearing trait, you will always know when one of these is fake. They are extremely loud, and I believe even without the hard of hearing trait, it's obvious. And as with alarms, they don't last nearly as long as the real helicopter events. Being aware of when helicopter events happen also helps. Between day 5 and 9, the event hits. Any helicopters you hear prior to July 14th are guaranteed hallucinations. And also the time. The helicopter events won't hit in the middle of the night, so it's safe to assume that a helicopter sounding off at 2 a.m. is probably not real. The helicopter can start anywhere between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. Also, correct me if I'm wrong about this. Now it's time to get into hallucinations that will catch you off guard and induce anxiety at first. Until you start to get a feel for how the trait operates, these things will definitely scare the shit out of you. A very important thing to note is that stress makes the symptoms of the trait worse. If you choose the smoker trait, be prepared to have a lot of hallucinations until you get enough cigarettes to smoke regularly. From what I can tell, the schizophrenia trait causes smokers to want to smoke more often than usual, though I could be wrong about this. It also causes survivors to get bored and sad much quicker. It does not take long before the survivor will have a severely depressed moodle if these things aren't addressed quickly. As a side note, many schizophrenics do smoke and report that nicotine does help with symptoms. You'd be surprised at how many people in mental institutions smoke cigarettes. I've been in mental institutions plenty of times in my life, and pretty much everybody there smokes cigarettes. So this is an interesting thing that is actually true to life about this mod. First off, any sound a zombie can make, this trait can mimic. You will occasionally hear zombies wiping against windows, banging on, and even breaking down doors. Also note the sound of windows breaking can be hallucinated as well. Sometimes you'll hear a zombie breathing in rooms next to you, and when you go check, they'll disappear. This causes your survivor to scream and drop anything they're carrying, including their weapon. They also do this when they see a hallucinated zombie appear in front of them. This creates problems that you never asked for, namely that your survivor could fall over and scratch themselves, causing an injury that can ruin an entire run. If you get a scratch on the foot or leg, you might be stuck with a limp for a while, and we all know how inconvenient that can be. It is quite annoying and one of the many cons that come with using this trait. This can also happen during battle while you're facing a horde. If a hallucinated zombie appears during the battle, your survivor will scream their head off and drop their weapon, and I've died plenty of times because of this, and it fucking sucks. Another hallucination you'll come across that will scare the shit out of you is the fake zombie banging on a door. This one is persistent too. It doesn't stop the way other hallucinations do, not until you open that door and find no zombie behind it. This one has caught me off guard a few times because I remember it happening in an upstairs bathroom after I cleared an entire house. It was the bathroom in the master bedroom where I was sleeping. At this point, the power was out and I didn't have a generator yet. Waking up in a pitch black house to the sound of a zombie banging on a door from a room that I knew damn well should be empty was pretty terrifying. This one will keep you on your toes, that's for damn sure. Now let's talk about what someone in chat during a live stream referred to as the Shadow People Discord call. There are some very scary hallucinations that your survivor will get, and they are loud as hell and can muffle the sound of real zombies. They last much longer than I appreciate, and if they strike while you're engaged in combat, you are likely to be forced to retreat as the distraction is outrageous. I usually get these at night, however, and I do have to wonder if that is intentional. I'll show you an example of each of these. There's the backwards talk, which lasts a long time, and that one is not nightmare-inducing, it's just annoying. It's someone saying what Nancy from The Craft says to Sarah towards the end of the film, but it's played backwards, making the words impossible to understand. And side note, The Craft is an excellent film from the 90s, and I would definitely recommend people watch it. That aside, this isn't a super scary hallucination, it's just obnoxious, especially since it goes on for more than 2 minutes. Fake jump scares when you get out of vehicles are quite common, so much though that I have come to expect them when my survivors get out of cars. It will play the jump scare sound and some zombie growling, tricking you into believing a zombie is attacking you right when you exit the vehicle. This was scary at first, especially when I'd get out of cars at an angle that made it difficult to see what was on the other side. But after a while, it lost its power as I learned to pay attention to everything around me when getting in and out of cars. This trait teaches you to be on your toes every second. I cannot reiterate that. You will double and triple and quadruple think every action that you take because of this trait. One thing to look out for is how hallucinated zombies act. Sometimes they will run towards you, but very often they will walk right by you as if you don't exist. If you approach them, they will disappear and cause your survivor to freak out and drop their belongings. I found they very often stand by cars, corpses, and near doors and windows without reacting to their surroundings. After playing with the trait for so long, you'll start to get a good sense of the hallucinated zombie behavior, making it easier for you to navigate around them. As mentioned earlier, stress makes the symptoms worse, so keeping your survivor as unmoodled as possible is paramount. However, the mod does come with antipsychotics. If you can locate these, they're usually in the same places you'd find medical supplies. You can make all your symptoms disappear completely. The trick is making sure you take them and antidepressants regularly. And side note, using this trait means that you will be popping a lot of pills. Antipsychotics and antidepressants, pain pills, beta blockers if necessary. It becomes a lot. Anyway, getting antipsychotics is the single best way to deal with the symptoms. However, it isn't always possible to find them, especially on the rarer loot runs. This is why stress management is so important when using this trait. Would I recommend using this trait? Yes and no. The trait changes the experience, but at the same time, it makes the game a lot harder and scarier. It stirs up a lot of jump scares. Your survivor will occasionally laugh and giggle for no reason. Sometimes those laughs turn into what could be sobs. The description does say they are mentally unstable, so it makes sense. Also, relatable. Characters with the schizophrenia trait get depressed a hell of a lot faster than survivors without it. Unless I take care of things right away, by the end of the first day in a new run, a schizophrenic character can be carrying around the severely depressed trait. This makes your character perform all actions slower, and though this may not sound like a terrible penalty, you will notice, and believe me, it can get you killed in the heat of battle. Just like in reality, playing with the schizophrenia trait makes Project Zomboid harder. Dropping weapons at inopportune times, seeing and hearing things that aren't really there, getting injuries due to freaking out at hallucinations, these things force you to have situational awareness at all times. And think, is that really worth 7 points? Truly? For me, the idea of playing a survivor who has symptoms I deal with is interesting, and that's why I use the trait almost every time. I wouldn't recommend the trait to any newcomers to Project Zomboid, and the reason why is the same reason I'd recommend it to long-term players. It completely changes the experience. Again, it makes the game a lot more difficult, especially in the beginning when you're not aware of how the trait operates. So that about covers it for today. If any of you played with this mod and noticed something I overlooked, let me know in the comments.